Okay guys, welcome back. So it's time to get going once again. We've just successfully got the bird looking at the target, and then using the translate function successfully got it to move across on the z-axis towards the target. When the target moved, then we use the look at function to rotate the bird quickly so it moved towards the new target. But we want this to happen automatically. So what I want you to do is click on the target focus and make sure that you have is trigger ticked. Now what that's going to do is make the physics engine act differently with this box collider. Instead of it actually being kind of a box that the bird could bounce off into a new location, it will simply turn it into a trigger so that we can use an inbuilt function called onTriggerEnter, so that when the collider for this bird gets onto the collider for the cube, I think it may be a bit too small actually, I'll just scale that up. There we go. So when the collider connects with the collider for the target focus, we're going to be able to detect this with a trigger and then call a function to move the target to a new location. Now, if I just zoom up over the top for a second, if you remember, when we created the terrain, I tried to position it so the center of the terrain was over the absolute 0, 0, 0 location on the map. So if I click on the target focus and we change the X, Y, and Z to be 0, now if I just switch to the move tool for a second, this is 0, 0, 0. Now that means that to the right we will be increasing the number on the x-axis, and if the terrain is 100 across and we're already halfway there, then this would be about 50 grid units. So if I move across on the x and watch the position here, if I move the target across to about 50, there we go, look, we're right on the edge. Now, I don't want the target to move right over here. That will take away from the gameplay experience. I don't want the bird to fly off the map. So I want to set some kind of boundaries. Now, if the absolute edge is 50, then how about 45? So the bird can fly over the mountains, but can't actually fly off into Never Never Land, basically. Now, if that's 50 and the center's 0, then if we went to the left, that would be negative 50. And you can see, look, the position is in the negative. Well, that would mean then, if this is 0 on the z-axis, this would be 50 north. And that means that going down would be negative 50. So it's the same rules, basically. We don't want to go further than about negative 48, negative 45. The only one that would be kind of different would be the y-axis. Now if I just put this back to 0 for a second and zoom down. Now bear in mind, on the next video we're about to build our cool little 3D world. So there's going to be objects around on the floor. I don't want the bird to be flying into things. So I'm going to set a base level, and I don't want the bird to fly much lower than about this distance. So maybe about 10. But likewise, if when we're using the AR experience with our mobile device, I don't want the bird to be flying too high up there either. So if we move up here, I'd say about 50 would be the maximum height that I'd like to make the bird fly, so that we can still keep the gameplay experience in something suitable. So how do we do this? Well, it's fairly simple when you know how. What we're going to do, I'll just position my camera back, is address two issues. The first thing is that we need to detect the collision and move the game object by creating a new function on the target focus collider script called moveTarget. The second issue is occasionally there could be a potential glitch where the bird flies across too quickly into the collider and then would attempt to fly backwards and forwards over and over again, which would give the impression that the bird is kind of lagging or glitching out. Now, what I'll do is I'll just boot up the AR experience and I'll move the bird over here for a second. To my left, I have the printed version of the image target for the stones. And if you look at the image target, that's the one that I'm using. In my database, it was the AR game, and then I selected the stones as the actual target image. So I've printed that off, and let's have a look at this in AR now. The bird's going to fly across, but watch what happens when it hits the target. So here we go. There's the target, here comes the bird, and bang, you see what happens? The bird flies across, goes slightly past the target, immediately switches back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So it's getting too close. Now, if we look down at the bottom, I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's still debugging the magnitude. What I'm going to do is put a little fix in that if the bird gets between, well, less than 1 basically, meaning it's really close to the target focus, then we're automatically going to call this move target function as well and move it to a new location. And that will get around the problem of just in case the speed is too fast and it just glitches out at one time. I'll just bring my bird back across for a second. Here we go, and the target focus can be over here. Okay then guys, let's get to it. Let's detect this collision on the trigger, and then we'll create the move target to move the box to a new location. We don't have to worry about the bird because the bird controller script will make the bird look at the new target on the z-axis, and then using the transform, translate will push the bird towards a new target. Now what we're also going to do is detect if the magnitude, the distance between the two, is less than 1, then we'll automatically call this move target function just in case we have a repeat of that mini glitch. So while the target focus is selected, double click on the script and open it up. Now we don't need the start and the update, but what we do need is a void on trigger enter. Now this is a built-in function, if I can spell it correctly, there we go. It's a built-in function inside Unity. Now it takes a parameter, so inside these brackets we need to pass something in so that it knows what to do when it detects that. Well, what we want it to actually listen out for, that would be the collider of the bird or anything really, so I'll just call it other. And then when this box detects any collision, what do we want it to do? Well, we want it to move the target, which doesn't exist yet, so it'll be in red, but we're about to fix that. What we're going to do is create a public void called move target, and all this will do is move the box to a new location. Now to do that we need to create a new location, so we need to create a vector 3, which will be a set of coordinates for an x, y and a z. And I'm just going to call that temp. I'm then going to set temp's x coordinate to be a random range between the two numbers that we wanted. So the x, if you remember, goes across the map. Now we didn't want it to go less than about -48. Now we're using a float because it could be 48 point something and everything in between when it's a random range. But we also don't want it to go further than 48 on the other side. Now it's exactly the same for the y and the z. We just have to create the correct ranges for the temporary variable to select between. Now, bearing in mind the orientation of the map, we don't want it to be less than 10 in height from the 0 location, which is where the terrain is, or higher than about 50. Now you can always adjust this if your map's slightly different in size. The z-axis would be a random range between -48 and +48. Great, and then all we have to do is get a hold of the transform that's attached to this game object, which is the target focus box, and set the transform's position, which would be this line here, to be a new vector 3, basically a new transform location, and that would be this new temp x, temp y, and temp z. or Z if you're in the States. There we go. Now, that's all we have to do for this move target function, really. For now, anyway. We're going to add a couple of things later on. But that will handle the detection and moving of the target to a new location. Now, to get around the issue of the bird being too close, I need to expose this class to the bird controller. So the bird controller can call a function if this target magnitude drops below 1. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. If the target's magnitude, now the target, if you remember, is the transform distance between the two, and the magnitude is what I'm going after. There we go. Now, if that is less than 1, I want it to do something. And what I want it to do is go after the target controller, target collider, sorry, and call the function for the move target, but we can't see it at the moment. Now, if I just comment this out for a second, like so, I'll show you how I'm going to expose the variable. We're going to create a new variable at the top that's static, and it will be kind of a copy of itself, the target collider. And I'm going to call that instance. Okay, then we're going to use a function called awake, which is run right at the start of pressing play, even before the start. It's used in the initialization that would actually start the start function. It's at that level of the processing. Now, all I want to do is make sure that we have this variable generated. So I'm going to use a mini if statement to say if instance, meaning this variable here, is empty or null, doesn't exist, then I want you to make a copy of yourself and set it to be this script that we're looking at now, which will give me access to anything on here. Now on the bird controller, I can come through this instance and access this publicly exposed function. And what that's going to do, if I uncomment this, I might as well just write it again, target collider, now I can go through the instance, which is effectively a copy of the script as an object, and that way I can call the move target function from here. And that's how we can get this script to talk to the other script. So that would mean that if the distance between the bird and the target is less than 1, then we're going to call this function anyway, just to get around any possibility of a glitch. Other than that, depending on the speed that the bird's flying, if the collision is detected before the two transforms meet, then we're going to move the target using the onTriggerEnter. So make sure you save everything. I'm going to come back to the scene, make sure it's maximized for you guys, and press play. I'll hold up the image target, and we're going to see the bird fly towards a target, but this time we're going to see the game actually start coming together. Here we go. Here comes the bird. Oh, the target, there we go. It's moving the target as the colliders happen. And we don't even know where the bird will fly. So it's even going to be fun for us to play because the bird will be randomly flying around. It could move an inch to the right and then move again. It could move 20 centimeters or 20 inches to the right. The most important thing is that it stays within the boundaries of the game so that it will still maintain this AR experience. Now, the terrain is generated and looks fantastic. The shadows look fantastic. The bird shadows there. And the cool thing about AR, remember, is with the mobile device, you'll be able to zoom right in and try and chase the bird if you keep missing the shot. Okay, cool. It's really coming together. Brilliant, guys. So hopefully you guys have got the same effect. We've got the bird flying towards. I think the flapping of the animation could probably do with speeding up slightly. Let's have a quick jump into the animator while the bird's selected. Click on the animation. I'm just going to increase that to 8 and save it. And then if we press play again, the bird should be flying around a little bit quicker this time. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think that's about right. I mean, you don't want to go too crazy. I mean, look, for example, let's just make it go absolutely bonkers. Let's make it fly at 60. And let's watch the bird fly for its life as if it's fighting against the wind. Okay, it's almost like it's glitching now because it's going too quick, but it's definitely panicking with the shots that we'll be taking at the bird later on. Okay, so 8 for me, that works. You guys can change it to whatever you want. Just make sure that it's moving around the scene and it looks kind of realistic. But I think this AR experience is working really well. I'm loving the shadows on the terrain. I think that looks great. And I'm liking the speed of the bird. Okay guys, cool. Right, in the next video, what we're going to do is actually start building our scene. So I'll stop the video now and I'll see you in the next one.